Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Welcome back to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your hosts, Oliver Cushing and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today is an insurance expert, a life coach, a sought-after public speaker, and a leadership development expert, Michael Ferguson. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to have you with us on the show.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for asking me to join your broadcast.
Absolutely. So to jump right in, you have a really interesting background and career history. So I was hoping you could take just a few minutes and tell our listeners a little bit about your background and the path that led you to becoming a coach and an executive and all of the cool things that you've done.
Well, it's funny you say that because I just had a friend of mine, we were chatting about something and I lent some expertise into what he was talking about. He's like, how did you know that? I said, because I did that before in a prior lifetime. So I have a very eclectic background. My original career was in sports medicine and physical therapy. I worked as a nationally certified athletic trainer from every level, from high school level to the average athlete, all the way up through professional sports. I worked with Division I athletes, pro and semi-pro football, and even had the opportunity to spend about a year with the U.S. Olympic team and working with them at their Chula Vista site in California. Parlayed that experience into a career in medical sales where I touched everything from orthopedics to urology to pharmaceuticals. And when I understood how people get paid for medical procedures, it was a natural carryover into the world of insurance. And I was actually recruited to come on and launch one of the first Medicare Advantage plans in the United States that actually happened here in Arkansas. So I was on the ground floor of a new and emerging sector of that business. When I had all of that experience, I was recruited by a couple hospitals to do contracting with them. So I went on and did hospital contracting with them, pharmaceutical distribution. And then as I decided to say, okay, I wanted to maybe wind back my career, I fell in and I was approached by an insurance company, the one I'm currently with, to say, hey, would you consider doing something like this? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, because it fit into what I was looking for the next phase in my career.
That is really cool. And I told our listeners from the start that you had a very varied background. So I love that you started kind of back at the beginning with sports medicine. And weirdly, those things kind of all ended up flowing and fitting together. So I think it's really cool the way careers don't always, I feel like your career path is a lot like mine. It's not, you didn't, start at age 20 and know exactly what you would be doing career long. You adjusted as life came. And I think that's really, really cool. So talk to us. You mentioned that you have the insurance company you're working with now. Tell us about that and what initially kind of sparked your interest and made you want to get involved in that industry.
So that's a great question. When they approached me, I sat down with them, and the name of the organization, the umbrella organization, is Symmetry Financial Group. Now, Symmetry Financial Group is based out of North Carolina. And they approached me with the business concept of that start off as an apprentice and you work and you build your own agency, and which is what I'm trying to do, is build my own agency and bring new agents on, not only to show them about this great industry, but also to help mentor and coach them to help them grow to become future business owners. So that's the main reason that it attracted me. The compensation structure, the availability of products that they had, the services that they had. And then the number one thing that really attracted me to this company and this organization was the corporate culture, because they build themselves, and I completely agree, as a personal and professional development company that actually works on the side doing insurance and financial advisors. So we spend a lot of time with professional development and focusing on developing that associate so they'll become stronger in the field and have that confidence when they meet with their clients.
Very cool. All right, I've stolen all of Mike's time so far. Oliver, I will let you ask some of your questions.
So, it's a winding career path, I gotta say. Like she said, it doesn't seem like you went from A to B to C. It looked like you kind of walked around a little bit there. So, did you see yourself doing this at any point before the opportunity presented itself, or did it just, come to the front of mind whenever it presented itself?
I jokingly say that still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I'm always exploring and trying to expand my horizons. If you look back at the progression of the career, healthcare, insurance, everything kind of stacked on top of each other. And so it was an easy progression because I understood the healthcare industry and I understood what it took for the physicians to get paid. I understood what it took for patients to have those resources. So I was really deeply focused in on the quality control and insurance side, the reimbursement side. And then I landed in life insurance because of a personal tragedy that happened in my family. And I started investigating it some more. And I was like, oh, I need to be in this world because I don't want what I went through personally to happen to anybody else.
And we hear that a lot with people, that something in their lives pushes them towards a field where they've got knowledge and they feel like they can make a difference. And so, are there any like special or particular areas that you work with, or are you more, big picture, or how does that look?
Well, I focus on three main areas with my clients. The first is the life insurance and the strategic use of life insurance. And I want to touch on a little thing. The reason that I got into this business is because 30 plus years ago, I had a friend of mine who was an insurance agent, and he sat my wife and I down and said, listen, you guys are getting married. You need some insurance just to protect, just in case something happens. So I was like, okay, it was under $100 for both of us. We got the policies. So fast forward 30 years, a couple different mortgages, three kids, a couple dogs, three or four different state moves. And on a morning just like we had this morning, my wife suddenly tragically passed away. She was in her early 50s. I don't remember much about that time period, about what happened during that time period. But what I do remember is my friend standing on my front step with the proceeds from that insurance policy. And what that did was afforded me to take the next 2 years off because I had elementary school son, a middle school son, and one who just started college like weeks before. It allowed me to take the next 2 years off to focus on their needs and focus on the recovery of losing somebody. And during that time period, during that recovery time period, it gave me the opportunity to understand that people don't need to go through this if they have the proper tools in place and the proper instruments in place. So I began to investigate, what can I do? What can I do with that? So that's when I found symmetry, and that's kind of what led me here. So life insurance and protecting families and histories. The next thing is health insurance. I have a passion for health insurance. So I do a lot of work on the ACA exchange and on and off market, trying to get people affordable health care because it's out there. People just don't know how to ask for it. So my job is really to knock on the door and say, hey, maybe I can save you some money, or are you covered? And the third area, which I'm really, really excited about, is an area called debt-free life. And it's a strategic use of a particular type of insurance policy that builds wealth inside the policy. And we work with clients to stratify their bills, their debts that they may have, and show them how to become debt-free in about half the time that they were scheduled to be, and save them thousands of dollars during that time period in interest payments. Once that happens, that cascades into what's called the infinite banking concept. And that allows you, this is the same concept that the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts use, and even banks, local banks here use, is utilizing the money that's inside a policy to fund your retirement or fund your life. And you don't have to go to the bank and borrow money. You don't have to do anything else. You're just borrowing from your insurance policy. So those are my three strategic areas I really love to focus on every day.
That's really cool. I love those areas of specialty, especially, and I think it's one that a lot of people don't talk about right now is that third area that you mentioned about becoming debt free. I mean, the numbers statistically here in the United States, when you look at the amount of people with massive debt paying all of these massive amounts of, what's the word I'm looking for? Interest all the time on these things. It's such a cool option and a cool tool and strategy that exists. And most people don't know that it's out there. So I love that you're out there kind of giving this counseling and helping people figure out how to become debt free in a lot less time with not paying nearly as much in interest. People don't realize how quickly that builds. And if a lot of people out there are making these minimum payments, not realizing they will never get this paid off. So I think that's a very unique and interesting strategy and tool that you have that a lot of insurance agents don't really talk about, which is very cool.
And if I may share a quick story, I just met with a client the other day that he and his wife were probably about close to $90,000 in debt between their mortgage, between their bills, paying off everything. And through this strategy that we built, and it was going to be about 30 years before he paid off everything. Actually, no, it was 15 years. We got it down to 5 years. He's going to be completely debt free in 5 years, not paying any more out of his pocket than he currently is. We're just redirecting payments. And we were going to save him $170,000, or no, excuse me, $83,000 in interest payments over the next 30 years. So we were putting that money back into his retirement plan. And he literally, both he and his wife almost broke down in tears in our conversation because they saw no way out of that pathway. And when we showed it to them on paper with exact dates of when they're going to be debt free, they were like, yes, sign me up.
Yeah, that's incredible. That is a great example story. And so you've touched on this, the pros that can happen, but when it comes to the insurance industry, you've been doing that for a while now. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making?
That is a great question. And you'd sent me these questions before, so I thought long and hard on those. I see three areas that most people make mistakes in. I'm guilty of it myself. The first one is that they wait too long to start a plan. Most people think that they have a lot of time, but time is your greatest asset, and time is what allows you to accumulate and build wealth. So time is the number one. The second thing is making those emotional decisions, out of fear, out of greed, out of panic. That destroys more financial plans than a down market will ever, because people say, well, the market's down, I got to pull my money out. And it's more expensive to get back in if you try to do that. And finally, is that most people that I speak with don't have a written plan. Now, I'm kind of old school and I'm going to age myself here, but years ago, if I wanted to take a trip someplace, I would pull out this thing called a roadmap. And I would lay out that roadmap and I plan how to get from A to B and figure out the route I was going to get there. Retirement planning is the same thing as planning your destination. If your financial strategy isn't written down, documented, and reviewed on a regular basis, it's not a plan, it's just a wish.
You could take what you just said, and I see Oliver nodding too. You could take what you just said and switch out some of the words for estate planning, and it would be the same advice that we would give. Because just like with you, in the estate planning world, everybody thinks they're going to live a lot longer. And so, but none of us are promised tomorrow. And so I would say one of the biggest mistakes on the estate planning side that we see is people who they plan to plan, just like they plan to plan for retirement, they plan to plan for an estate plan, and they always put it off for tomorrow. Nobody loves to do those things. And so there are a lot of things that on the front end with estate planning, it's just like in the financial world and the insurance world, there are so many options and cool things and strategies that we can do to make sure things work the way they want it to. After somebody's already passed away, the options are limited. It's really
It
more
is.
about cleaning up the mess. And I know it works that way in the insurance world as well. The earlier you can get it going, the better off you are. And I love what you said too, Mike, about it's not just a one-time thing where you do insurance and then forget it. It's really something that you need to pay attention into and be thinking about. That's how estate plans are too. You don't just do it and then put the binder on a shelf and not touch it for 20 years, because life changes quickly and things change
Exactly.
and babies are born and divorces happen. And there are so many different things that can impact the planning that you did. So I love that you shared those two things. We could copy and paste that into the same advice we try to give our clients as well.
Well, that's excellent. And I welcome working with financial advisors and financial planners such as yourself. The main reason is, especially after somebody passes away, what's the first thing that happens? There's an immediate need for cash because you have burial expenses, you have everything else. And a lot of time they don't have that much money on hand. But putting a strategy in place, even if it's a small policy, just to cover the funeral or just to cover maybe 6 months worth of mortgage payments if they still have it, that's a great strategy to add to a financial plan, because now it gives that family that time to breathe, that time to take a deep breath so that they don't have a financial crisis while they're going through an emotional one.
And so that's really, we hear that all the time, and it's something we work with clients on all the time, because like I feel like the biggest word that you hear is until. Everything was okay until this happened, blah blah blah, and that's what we hear all the time. It's that word until. And that could be, ended with many different scenarios. It could be a good thing.
It
I was
does,
not
yeah.
doing so well until I met my wife, my spouse, whoever, right? Yeah, you could go the other way. I was doing just fine until this and that. So
And
that's
it's the same way with finding life insurance for people.
mhm.
The earlier you get it, the better off it is, the lower cost it is, until you develop diabetes, until you develop some life-changing, because then that puts you in a different category, a different risk category, and the price becomes more expensive.
So
Right.
I
Yeah.
have a
Sorry, Oliver, life insurance policies are like mind-blowingly cheap when you're young. When you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s, when you don't have health problems yet. And we try to encourage even our estate planning clients to really look into that, because especially if you have young kids, with your own story, Mike, which was a difficult one, thank goodness you had some financial breathing room where you could really focus on your
Did.
kids, where you could focus on taking care of yourself. You weren't dealing with all of those things and that grief while also trying to maintain a work schedule or maintain a business and all of those extra things. That type of thing is something people tend not to think about until a tragedy happens, and then they're left without the resources that they need.
And estate planning, what you guys do is very valuable for clients, especially if they have younger children or even grandchildren, to plan for their future. There's instruments that we use that build incredible wealth. I helped a client just recently set something up for their new daughter that it's going to be a contribution, I think of, if I remember correctly, it was like $50 or $100 a month for the next 25 or 20 years. And when that child becomes age 65, they're going to have almost $2 million in equity built up inside of an insurance policy that they can borrow from. So I talked to the client. I said, okay, there's the wedding, there's a trip, there's their new house, there's whatever, there's the tuition for their great grandchildren, whatever it is. The tools, the instruments that we have available in this industry are just incredible.
And so, I know you probably deal with lots of different, people and lots of different things, but what does a typical client look like that walks in the door, whenever you're trying to help somebody out? What does that look like usually?
Our main focus right now, where we get a lot of our clients that are new purchases of homes, and we work in the area of mortgage protection insurance. So it's just smaller policies that cover that time period as they're making that transition if something was to happen. And policies actually have built-in disability benefits to them that they're awesome, where they can actually pull money from that. We're also looking at clients that are maybe looking to protect their retirement savings from the volatility of the market. Insurance policies protect volatility against, they're not tied to the stock market, they're tied to the growth and the profitability of an insurance company. So if the insurance company is growing, the profitability is growing, I have none of my carriers that I work with have had a down year in the past 150 years. So by putting money in policies like this, not only do you get the protection of downside risk, but you get an insurance policy that comes with it. So in case something happens to you, your family is protected. So I'll have people that are on the front end of their career. I'll have people on the back end of their career. It doesn't matter. Everybody has questions because money is one of those baffling things to people. They just don't understand it. Insurance is as well. And that's where people like you and I and Katie Beth come in, is sitting down and having that one-on-one conversation with them, explaining those nuances and allowing them to make a decision, an informed decision, and help guide them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and a lot of wisdom. And I feel like we connect in so many. I know we come from different industries and backgrounds, but I feel like we agree on so many different things, different wisdom and advice that we give to our clients. Speaking of which, and this is going to be a tough question. I promised you before we started filming that I wouldn't throw too many tough questions your way, but I do want to ask this one. If you could pick just one piece of advice to give our listeners, maybe somebody who doesn't really know a lot about insurance or how some of these policies work, if you could give just one piece of advice to our listeners, what would that be?
That is a great question. I think the biggest piece of advice I could give anybody is don't wait for that crisis to happen before you realize the value of professional guidance, of allowing somebody. By then it's often too late and you can't really do anything. You can Google information about financial planning, about insurance, about all of this, but what you can't Google is wisdom. And that wisdom that advisor is sitting across the table with, and the perspectives and the strategies, you can't find that online. You have to rely on somebody that's sitting across the table. Insurance and financial planning aren't like a one size fit all product. They're all customized, individually customized to the people that we're working with. So professionals like you, like myself, really sit and tailor plans that fit to people's lives, to what they're looking for. So don't think that it's a cookie cutter. The agent has to fit you into this. And if you don't fit, sorry. We have the ability to customize it and work with insurance companies to find everything, because the clients I work with deserve more than a generic online quote or something like that. They really deserve a real conversation about their goals, their dreams, and really who they want to protect if something was to happen.
I love what you said there about, not being cookie cutter. It's not a one size fits all approach to any of these things. And the professional guidance part of that, I'm sure there's lots of different places people can go online where they can, look things up. But what you said again about, you can't Google wisdom. Sometimes you get somebody coming in there, well, I Googled this. And it may be generally applicable in a lot of cases, but for their particular situation, it may not be that. And so knowing the difference between, oh, that would work for you or it wouldn't work for you is worth, it's weight in gold right there, because you can look up a lot of things. There's a lot of information on the internet, but not all of it's going to be helpful, useful, or correct.
And that's a great statement that you just said there, Oliver. There's an interesting analogy that I came up with. I have a lot of friends that work in the medical field, and I could look up, I have a cough and cold, and you wouldn't walk into your doctor's office and say, I have a cough, it hurts here, you need to write me antibiotics, thank you very much, and walk out the door. That doctor is going to ask you all of those questions about, does it hurt here? What was going on before? Don't expect the same thing from a financial professional, that you come in the door as a prospective client and say, I've looked it up and I want this, I want that. Well, it may not work for you. You may not qualify. Just because it said it on Google or TikTok doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. Let's find that right product that's right, and understand that our best interest, and you do as well, have a fiduciary interest to that client. We're licensed professionals within the state. The financial services industry is more highly regulated than the pharmaceutical and the banking industry. We constantly have regulators that are looking over our shoulders. So why would you think that we're going to give you bad advice and try to run you the wrong direction? It's not in my best interest to do that.
And following on that, do you think that some people just feel intimidated? Like they don't want to come in and feel like they don't know what they're talking about? Do you think that's a roadblock for some people? Because we see that sometimes people want to put it off and put it off because they just don't want to seem like they don't know what they're talking about. But ultimately, that's what we're there is to help. So do you experience that at all?
We do. And the pushback that I perceive, and I even talked about it, is people are afraid to talk about their own mortality and understand, that we're talking about the what if. It's not the what if, it's the when. We're talking about having that strategy in place for the when. So people don't want to talk about that. And then it's a perception that, well, I don't make enough money to have a will or an estate plan, or I can't afford insurance. I wrote a $2 million life policy on a 25, 30-year-old, and it cost him $40 a month. $40 a month for $2 million of coverage, and he has three kids. He thought it was going to be like $300 a month. And I was like, no, it's only like $40 a month. So when you bring those and the light bulbs go on and oh, this isn't as scary. People are just intimidated because they don't know. And it's my job to just have that open conversation with them, not in a sales situation, but more consulting and say, hey, have you ever thought about this? Or, great new car. What if I could show you how to pay that car off in half the time and save interest? Would you be interested in that? Let me show you, and having that. So that's what I do. That's what I love.
Yeah, that connects so much again with what we do. We have clients all the time, prospective clients that come in that have waited so long because they're intimidated by the idea of a bunch of lawyers. And then on the flip side of that, nobody wants to feel stupid, or they carry that fear. And I imagine you see a lot of this too, Mike, and you touched on this. I'm not wealthy. I don't need an estate plan. I don't have a ton of stuff. I don't need an insurance policy. I can't afford something like that. I make minimum wage, or I'm a blue collar worker, and don't realize that some of these solutions out there, most of these things are not just for the super ultra wealthy. All of these tools and strategies, there's something that fits whatever your economic status is. And the amazing part is the earlier you get going, the earlier you can really have an impact on the trajectory of kind of your financial path. And so we really like to make it clear to our clients and try to tell people when we're out and about doing speaking events and things, estate planning, financial advising, having a good insurance policy, these are not things that exist just for wealthy people. These are things that exist for everybody. And there's an insurance policy that fits in everybody's budget. I got one when I was like in my early 20s that was seriously like, I want to say it was a life insurance policy. It was like $3 or $4 a month for it. And of course, because it's lifelong. And so still paying on that. But what an incredible gift, that is. And I have that peace of mind now. And so letting people know those options out there I think that's a huge piece of what you do. And I think that's just really, really incredible.
And remember also that life insurance is not for you. It's not for you, Katie Beth, sitting right there in front of me as my client. The life insurance policy is for your kids that are standing right behind you, your husband, your family members. Because my goal is to put TikTok out of business or actually not TikTok, but GoFundMe out of business. Because I'm tired of getting on Facebook and saying, we need to do a GoFundMe campaign because Uncle Bob passed away and he didn't have any insurance. For $25 a month, he could have had $10,000 worth of coverage, which would have paid for the funeral so that the kids don't have to take the money out of their savings to cover the mortgage on the house before they have to do a short sale, before it goes into probate, before anybody else. You guys talk about that all the time. I know you do, about protecting that and giving that family that breathing room. Now we have to make those life adjustments. And how can we make that easier for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yes, those are conversations that we have with clients all the time. And it's very painful to have those types of conversations when they realize that something very simple, 10 years ago is no longer an option. and they're dealing with all of this financial stress in the midst of grief. And that's not what any of us want for our family members. We all hope we'll live long, healthy lives, but the truth is tragedies do happen. And so you were exactly right. My insurance policy isn't about me. It's about making sure that if something happens to me, the people that I love and care for will still be provided for, especially in the midst of grief. So great.
Excellent. Excellent.
Great words. Okay, final question.
Okay.
Okay, and this is another tough one, another deep thought question. So through the work that you do, Mike, what is it that you hope your legacy will be?
I hope that my legacy is that after I'm either out of this business or, the good Lord has called me home and I still have policies that are in force, that it will make an impact on the second, third, and fourth generations of those people that I'm working with today. Putting a college student through college will be, 40, 50, 60 years from now. That's the impact that I make.
I love that. Oliver, final thoughts or questions for Mike?
I really enjoyed this interview. I feel like you come from a really good place. You have a lot of knowledge and expertise, and I'm really excited for more conversations to go forward with you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I welcome and thank you for the opportunity to sit down and talk with you. I love talking about this because my number one priority is making sure that families are protected for their future. And that's all we can do. And using the tools that I have available, it's easy to make that happen.
That's fantastic. Well, we want to thank all of our listeners. This has been the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your hosts, Oliver Cushing and Katie Beth Hand. And our guest today was Mike Ferguson. And to get connected with Mike, you can find him on LinkedIn, and we will link that in the show notes for you to make it easy. Mike, thank you again for taking the time with us.
Oh, you are so welcome, and thank you for the opportunity again.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.